Welcome back to Chin Music, our baseball show at TalkNorth.com. Yes, we will talk about the Pohlads. We'll talk about the firings, the departures, the collapse, the future, the TV deal. We have so much to get to today. By next week, we'll be talking more. We'll be kind of kicking around more fun topics. We'll talk about emotions in baseball and the playoffs and everything else. But this will be a pure Twins edition. There's so much going on, so much to catch up with you on. The lineup today: Roy Smalley, former Twins star, current Twins broadcaster; LaVelle, Neal, Star Tribune baseball guru and columnist. I'm Jim Souhan, also from the Star Tribune. Again, this is TalkNorth.com. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Service Studios. I want to thank Aquarius Home Services, Minnesota Masonic Charities, and Chew Vision Institute. Also, a quick note, my friend Scott Dayton, Twill by Scott Dayton in the Edina Galleria. They're having a Peter Millar trunk show this weekend. TwillMN.com for the information. Just show up sometime this weekend. They have discounts, gifts. I love the Peter Millar stuff. I wear it all the time. Highly recommend it. We didn't get that information in some of his ads early in the week, so I wanted to catch you up. Tell him we sent you if you do go. So let's get to it, gentlemen. And by the way, if you like this show, please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. We keep adding shows and content to the network. Any show you like, please subscribe. It helps us out. It's easiest way for you to listen. We do appreciate it. Let's start with the big talker in town, at least the talk radio talker. Joe Pohlad says they're not going to increase the payroll. Also says they're not going to decrease the payroll. And then days later, we get news about the new TV deal. LaVelle, walk us through it, what it means for fans, what it means for the franchise.
Yeah, well, what I was told is that the Twins knew the announcement with Major League Baseball was coming down the pike. So that influenced their decision onto holding payroll steady for 2025, which is scary once you think about it, because if there wasn't a deal, they may have just had to announce another reduction, which really would have upset the fan base. But starting in 2025, Major League Baseball would take over production of Twins games, Guardians games, and Brewers games, in addition to the teams are already doing that for. And the other teams in the league that are being operated by the league are charging like $100 for a season. No blackout restrictions, and you have access to all your favorite teams' games. So they're expecting that price to kind of be similar for the Twins situation. So and that's a good thing. I mean, they know where they're going to be, where the games are going to be on next year. They're already anticipating less revenue from this stream right off the bat, and maybe it'll pick up over the next few years. But instead of games being available to just over 1 million fans in the region, they think as many as 4 million fans in the region could have access to Twins games this way. And it's just going to be a matter of them growing into this different type of service that they're offering. So, Joe Pohlad did say on the last day of the regular season that payroll was not going to be decreased. He also said that he had to make a business decision last year to cut payroll, which I thought was the absolutely last thing owner should ever say on the record, because fans are going to want their owners to treat the team as their civic duty to make sure they're contending every year and that they're equipped with as much resources as possible. Of course, we know it's not reasonable, but you never come out and say, I had to make a business decision. That's just not going to go over well, and it hasn't. And for a franchise in which they tried to make a donation toward a new stadium that ended up being just a loan contraction to Don Beaver, it's the latest, bad message that they've sent out there. And that's where the distrust over the Pohlad family emerges from. So it was a weird stretch there from the last regular season game until the day yesterday when the TV agreement was announced in terms of revenue. So we go into the offseason with some players coming off the books, but Pablo Lopez's contract goes up from $8 million to $21 million. It's probably going to arbitration raises are going to eat up whatever reduction that they have coming off the books. So I don't know how in what ways this team can get better unless it's internally for 2025.
Well, Roy, you are a TV broadcaster. You work with Bally's, which will not be broadcasting games anymore. You have obviously a great financial background. You've been a baseball player. You've been part of the baseball union, and you've been around the Pohlads for a long time. What's your view of where the Pohlads are right now in terms of running this team and what the fan reaction is? And do you think that the general fan reaction, which is that Pohlads need to sell the team, has a point to it?
Well, I don't know how you get somebody. I mean, maybe you get somebody to pay $1 billion, and that somebody or corporate somebody has more money than the Pohlads have in their personal coffers to say we don't make business decisions anymore. We are a public utility stewards to the fans, and it doesn't matter whether we run ourselves into the ground financially with this deal. We're just going to keep spending money. I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a person out there or a corporation out there that is like that. I understand making business decisions. I agree with LaVelle that maybe you don't say that with as much publicly with as much fervor as has been said, but I do understand the business decisions. Now, having said that, I do think that owning a sports franchise comes with it some understanding of why you're in it, and you're in it ultimately, besides your personal reasons, you're in it to ultimately sell the club for significantly higher than what you paid for it, which would be the case here with Pohlads. And I guess as far as them not owning the club anymore, I think they have always been in their business history. They have always been they have always made quote business decisions, and I think it goes against the long term DNA in the Pohlads to do things financially that are not in the best business interests of their whole, business domain. So I think it's going to be hard for them. It has been hard for them, and will continue to be hard for them to say, we're going to run this as a money loser, just because we know someday we're going to sell it and make a bunch of money, and in the meantime, we don't mind piling our own money into it, even though the gross revenues from all of our sources for the Twins don't support the payroll that we've allowed this to get to. I mean, so it's a long harangue about saying, look, I mean, I understand business decisions. I understand the way the Pohlads have always operated, probably always will. And would it be better for the Twin Cities if they could find somebody that'll pay them, I don't know, maybe $1 billion's too cheap. Maybe it's $1.5 billion. I mean, who's going to pay them, $1 billion and something, and run the business as a loss because they have so much money other places that they just like the way the fans are happy. I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I just to add one quick thing on that too. Is very few instances through the years in my career covering ball in which an owner has said, "Damn the bottom line. I want to try to win." One was Ewan Kaufman in his final years because he wanted to see the Royals have success before he passed away, and that did not work. Two was Mike Ilitch, his last few years with the Tigers. He signed Miguel Cabrera not once but twice, and I think they got to the World Series in 06, I believe. It may have been 06, maybe not been.
05, I think.
05, they had a nice run there, but they couldn't break through. And most recently is the owner of the Padres, Peter Seidel, God rest his soul, but he died of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma like 2 years ago, but he activated a plan to try to bring San Diego a World Series champion before he passed away. And I believe in 2022, the Padres lost $113 million, according to Forbes. So it just shows you what's at stake here when you decide to activate nonstop spending. So it's not easy, and it's done very rarely in baseball.
And I think it's a great point, LaVelle. And I don't care how much money that you make, losing $113 million is an event. I mean, that's a lot of money. And I don't care if you're a billionaire. That's a lot of money. And there's a finesse there somewhere about knowing what you may have coming down the road in a sale, and saying, in the meantime, we will kick in X amount more of our own money over and above what would make, what makes business sense, just because we're stewards of the game of baseball in the Twin City, in Twins territory, right? And so what that number is in the finesse, I don't know, but to LaVelle's point and to my point, there is a finesse there. There's not an unlimited coffer. I mean, there just isn't.
one thing I've heard from somebody I trust is that, with Carl, he had won 2 World Series. He'd kind of been able to get better publicity out of that experience than he ever would have gotten in any other venue, any other enterprise. And there was, I think people got mad for justifiable reasons when he stripped down to like $18 million payroll, said, I'm not even going to try to compete. I'm just going to play studio baseball and not care if anybody shows up. That's bad for the game. It's bad for the franchise, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Somebody who knows the Pohlads was telling me that in these current circumstances, things are just more complicated. You have 3 brothers who basically own the team. A nephew is running the team, and they have a lot of their money tied up in commercial real estate and in their other businesses. And as much as it's easy to say the Pohlads are billionaires, that doesn't mean they have they can walk to an ATM and take out $1 billion. It's correct. It's hard. The losses actually would hurt them. It's not just, somebody who has $2 billion and $100 million just is, in that scale isn't that much, even if it is. So I just think we're in a market where everybody wants the simple answer and the easy scapegoat. And while I have my qualms about Pohlad ownership, and I do wish they'd spend more on a very selfish basis. I just don't know how I logically say that they should lose $100 million a year.
It's such a great point about cash flow, right? I mean, there's a difference. There's a huge difference between net worth and annual cash flow from operations. There's a big difference.
LaVelle, you have a final thought on that topic?
I say Pitchfork Nation is at its fullest, at its largest ever during my years here right now about the Pohlads and spending, and they're not moving off that mark. And so I don't know. Well, the only way I can see the Pohlads changing people's minds is they're going to spend their way out of this, but I don't see them doing it. So I think there's going to be a lot of frustration this offseason when the Twins make minimal moves or rely on younger players getting more experience to improve.
We're going to talk about actual baseball things coming up here and the departures in the Twins organization and everything else. I'll make this final point. What I don't like about just everybody screaming about the Pohlads all the time is it just short circuits thinking. It substitutes for thinking rationally about how you run a franchise. And it pretends that money always solves every problem when obviously it doesn't. It pretends that signing one more free agent pitcher gets you to the World Series when there's so much evidence that doesn't always work. To me, it substitutes for real analysis. And you look at this Twins team this year, and if Pablo had pitched better in a couple of big games down the stretch, and if Royce Lewis, Ryan Jeffers, and Matt Wallner hadn't all gone south into terrible slumps at just the wrong time, if you had maybe one fewer key injury this year, if those things happen, they're competing for a division title and they might still be in the playoffs. It's Correct. Not always just about the money.
No, you're exactly right. And money doesn't guarantee anything. The Yankees have spent $3 billion on payroll since their last World Series. I just crazy.
Well, I always say that the Yankees have won 1 World Series since 2000. The Dodgers have won 1 World Series since I think '85, and they've outspent everybody in baseball during that period of time. So it's just too. Even though it is based in logic, it substitutes for actual thinking about how you operate a baseball team.
And, based on at the time of this taping, the Dodgers are 1 loss away from being eliminated from the playoffs, and they've spent more than anybody this year.
Yep. All right, we're going to move up to Pohlads right now. I want to get to the departures in the organization and what it means. I want to remind you, we're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studios. We want to thank Aquarius Home Services.
Yes, fall is in full swing, and Old Man Winter will be visiting soon. Scott for Aquarius Home Services. Now is the time to make sure your furnace is ready for the winter ahead. And to help you prepare, Aquarius is offering a Furnace Peak Performance Check for just $29. Don't let Old Man Winter catch you by surprise. Schedule your Furnace Peak Performance Check today at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended.
I'd like to thank another Minnesota company that does great things, Minnesota Masonic Charities.
When people think of the Freemasons, they often think of secret handshakes and unusual hats, and of course, the pancake breakfast. Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that you think about the work that they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the University of Minnesota or the Masonic Children's Hospital and the Masonic Home in Bloomington. They are just a few examples of the important work that the Freemasons support here in Minnesota. As part of the largest fraternal organization in the world, Masons have consistently answered the call when it comes to charitable needs. We look forward to learning so much more about their many programs here in the weeks to come.
And we want you to hear about John Krasinski's experience. John does our basketball show, the John Krasinski Show. He also contributes to the Viking Update Show on the network. Check out what he has to say about True Vision Institute.
Yeah, I'm a brand new man, Jim, this week. If for listeners of the John Krasinski Show over the last month or more, I've been telling you all about True Vision Institute in Bloomington. And we've been talking a lot about the help that they gave me in the consultation to figure out how to correct my vision once and for all, and all the process of going through it. Well, finally, last week, I was able to go in and have LASIK surgery at True Vision. And, I've talked to people who have had it before, and they all say how much it changes their lives. I'm like, all right, come on. Can it really be that good? And here I am, less than a week out from surgery. And I'm telling you, it is that good. For the first time since I've been in fourth grade, I don't have glasses or contacts to mess with. I don't have to worry about going in for, every year or two for vision checkups and for new glasses and putting hundreds of dollars into new glasses or new contacts. A contact gets ripped and I got to go replace that. The best thing about it is I wake up in the morning and I'm not fumbling around for my glasses so I can see, check my phone, look over at my wife and see her face. Like I'm seeing 100% clearly. And it happened almost immediately after the surgery. I went in for the surgery last week and I was a little nervous. You got a laser pointed at your eye. It's nerve wracking, but the people at True Vision were so welcoming and calming and comforting that it really took a lot of the anxiety away for me for the procedure itself. I was in and out in a little over an hour. The procedure itself actually only takes a couple of minutes. They do what they need to do to get your eyes fixed and they get you on your way. My mom gave me a ride home. I spent the night just kind of resting, sleeping. When I woke up the next morning, seeing 100% clearly. Could drive to my follow-up appointment, 20/20 vision. Everything was great. And I still am kind of walking around pinching myself right now that I can't believe I don't have glasses or contacts anymore. And Dr. Chu was absolutely phenomenal through the process. I was nervous. He has a very soothing, calming voice. He takes you through it very easily. He puts you at ease. He makes you feel comfortable when you're on the table getting the procedure done. And it just was really helpful for me in just kind of taking away a lot of the nervousness that I had about it. He was so easygoing and was so reassuring, and just talked me through everything. It only took a few minutes to get done. And then I was out the door and on my way. A week later, I feel great. I'm seeing perfectly. I wish I would have done it 10 years ago. Go to truevision.com and set up your consultation. Tell them the John Krasinski Show sent you. But honestly, I cannot speak highly enough about my experience there and about the results. It's just life-changing stuff.
And one more reminder, we have such a great lineup. We have Roy and LaVelle in baseball. We have LaPanta and Russo on hockey. Russo and LaPanta on hockey. We have Kevin Gorg on hockey. We've added Randy Shaver's show. And Randy's show is doing great stuff. He's getting all kinds of exclusive content. He's so passionate about it. It's fantastic. You have Mike Grimm on the Gophers. You have Jeff Diamond, the former Vikings general manager, on the Vikings. Me and John Krasinski on the Vikings. Don Mitchell. Don Mitchell's new show has been fantastic too. I highly recommend the Chris Hockey edition. Amy Hockert, her friend from Fox 9, who's a wonderful human being, was her guest this week. Check it all out. Again, if you like a show, please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. One more note before we get back to baseball. I want to thank and congratulate Karen Cleary. We hired Karen from the Twins to be our sales executive. She's just retired. Had a little get-together for her last night. Andrew Haidt, who's worked for the Twins, Vikings, Minnesota Wild, Tampa Bay Rays, is connected to so many businesses, so many teams and athletes in the local community. He's our new sales executive. So if you know him, congratulate him. We're really looking forward to working with Andrew, and we really thank Karen. All right, let's get to the departures. Thad Levine steps down. They fire all the hitting coaches. They fire Tony Diaz. Once again, let's start with LaVelle on your take on that news.
I think it was inevitable. I was told weeks ahead if the Twins did not make the postseason, there were going to be some different voices brought into that clubhouse. I don't know what that means per se, but I know the last couple of years with the hitting coaches, they may have been hitting a wall in terms of trying to talk guys out of slumps and trying to help them with their approaches. One of the coaches was showing up at 10 a.m. for a 7 p.m. game, trying to go through data and come up with ways to, disseminate information to hitters.
Well, we lost LaVelle temporarily. Roy, one thing we kept hearing about hitting coaches, what I heard when I would go to the clubhouse and talk to people is, okay, these guys might know what they're doing. They might have great data. They might be smart. They might have a certain amount of success. And they did have periods of great success with these hitters. The one question I kept hearing was, can they, as people who didn't hit or succeed as major league hitters, never went through a slump in the major leagues, can they help a current major league hitter with the emotional experience, the existential experience of fighting through a slump in the big leagues? Where do you stand on that?
I think it's really, really hard for someone that's been a really good to great major league hitter to be an effective hitting coach. You just don't see it very often, and maybe you don't see it because guys have been really great hitters have made a bunch of money. And they don't want to do what you have to do. They don't want to work that hard anymore, and I wouldn't blame them, about that. So, I'm not really sure. I have seen some good hitters that were hitting coaches that, were not all that successful. And I think in a lot of ways, I kind of think back to my conversations I had with Lou Piniella when we were teammates in the Yankees, and Lou was a real student of hitting, and I learned a lot from him, and we talked a lot about stuff, and he said, something that resonated with me, and because I wasn't a naturally gifted hitter. I mean, I needed to really work at stuff, and Lou said, "Look, I've done everything wrong. I've tried everything. I've done everything wrong that there is to do." And he said, "These are the kinds of things that I've learned," and that's the kind of person that you really need. And I think it's important to have. I personally think it's important to have had big league experience. I know that the way the game is now, more and more, it's not that way. It doesn't mean that if you have not hit in the big leagues, but you've played in the minor leagues and worked your way to a certain level and then studied hitting the rest of the time, that you can't be a good hitting coach. I'm not saying that at all. I just think it takes a special kind of person that has the ability to understand major league pitchers and hitters and how he's going to communicate with hitters, both on from a mechanics standpoint, swing plane standpoint, being prepared for at bats, understanding what a pitcher is going to try to do to get each individual hitter out. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has to go in there, and I think the best hitting coaches are guys that have a combination of all those things from personal experience, and so I think it's hard, but I also think at the same time that hitting coaches get too much, don't get enough credit when things go well, and get too much and take too much criticism when they don't go well. So I'd like to say this in that vein: the Twins put together since 2019. They have said the name of the game now is striking people out on the mound and hitting the ball out of the ballpark with your lineup. I mean, and I heard that expressed to me, and I'm sure you guys have too. And so they put together a team, that ostensibly would hit the ball out of the ballpark, and then they had some experience with that. Guys were hitting the ball out of the ballpark, and Kepler hit the ball out of the ballpark. Royce Lewis burst on the scene, hit it out of the ballpark. Jeffers was hitting it out of the ballpark. Buxton, everybody. It got ingrained in them I think, as an offense, that you look for mistakes, you look for balls that you can hit, and you hit it out of the ballpark. And if you strike out, because you were just looking for that pitch and never got it, or you fouled it back when you did get it, then so be it. You'll get them next time, with the same approach. I'm not. I don't like that approach. I don't think that the hitting coaches that they just fired were teaching the guys that or advocating that. I just think this group of guys, they got it ingrained what kind of personality, what kind of results they were looking for, and I just don't know how much a hitting coach could alter that, could get them to change their mindset. There's just so much. Look, this is the way I'm comfortable, so I'm just going to do it this way, and that's the death of a hitter. I know that for a fact. When you won't try something else because because you go 0 for 10 trying it and it makes you feel a little uncomfortable, then you will not grow as a hitter anymore. And so I think they ran up against and are going to run up against a lot of that. I know for sure. I listened to Popkins say year before this past one when the Twins were slumping and then they caught fire in the second half. And before the second half, he was saying, I just think we need to do things a little differently. I mean, look for the ball in a different location. Look for a different kind of pitch instead of hunting fastballs all the time. Look for breaking balls, or instead of hunting the inside fastball to pull, look for the ball out over the plate. Look in different zones. And they caught fire. I don't know if they did that, or if just talent happened. But they were not able to do any of those kinds of adjustments this year when things started going badly. And I'm not sure it's the hitting coach's fault. Maybe it is. I'm not close enough to it to know, but I'm just not sure about that. And the other thing that I know is that I've talked with people and said in the organization, on the field, in the dugout, and said, guy running on second base and nobody out, or second and third and nobody out, you can roll the ball to the second baseman. Their infield's playing back. You can roll the ball to the second baseman, and you get one run in and one run over with only one out. You could score 2 runs without getting hit if someone would just roll it over to the right side. And this person looked at me and said, Roy, our guys, there's 70% of them that wouldn't know about that, would never occur to them, and the other 30% can't do it. So, I in a situation like that, I just wonder how much it's the fault of the hitting coaches. I'm sorry.
No, I agree with you. I've had this conversation with Twins people too, and long before they ever fired these hitting coaches, what they would always say to me is the hitting coach is the hardest job. It's the easiest to make a change at. It's just these are temporary jobs, and they're filled with negativity because you basically spend all your time working with guys who are struggling. And I don't know how good they were. They had stretches where this team hit like crazy, probably overachieved. But when you watch those at bats in September, you knew they were going to get fired, whether it was their fault or not.
Too, hitters usually make the coaches look good. And bad hitters usually get coaches fired. The other thing, too, the other component to this is, someone was telling me in the clubhouse that last month or so of the season, there was a bunch of young players who either mentally or physically or both ways, hit a wall, and they couldn't push through that wall. Royce Lewis being at the top of that list. So as a hitting coach, how do you help them get through that? Is that something the player has to figure out on his own, or is that something coach can help him with? But apparently that was something that was a big concern going down the last few weeks of the season when they were skidding, they weren't winning games, they weren't hitting, and I'm sure it was frustrating.
Look, when you hit a wall like that as a young player, you can hear a lot of platitudes from the hitting coach, but that's just something. That's the baptism of fire that makes you a better hitter. If it works, if you're good enough to learn from that, and if your talent's good enough to get your mind straight, to go with that talent. That's just something that's a baptism of fire that, many, many young hitters have to go through. And it really is just a question of how they adjust in their gut and in their mind and take a real honest look about what they need to do, hitting mechanics wise. But for the most part, that's the mental grind that ultimately when you hit a wall, you're done. And you're done this year, and you're just going to have to figure out how to not get to that wall next, in the rest of your career.
LaVelle, let's get on to Thad Levine's departure. I've heard some things, but you probably have more information. I'll start off with what I've heard. And Thad, it's not like they're hiding it. They kind of said as much, both Derek and Thad. Thad comes in and he's basically 1B to Derek's 1A. They do everything in tandem. You see them together all the time. Thad did most of the interviews early on because Derek was just new to dealing with media. And then once Derek became the team spokesman, once the assistant general manager started taking over more of the analytics, it felt like Thad's role got shrunk down to something he didn't even feel comfortable, doing and taking full salary. That's what I've heard. What have you heard?
That's about the same, especially once Derek got more comfortable dealing with the media. He wanted one voice to come out of that front office. And so he decided that voice was his. So the marginalization of Levine probably started then. And I think when he elevated, Jeremy Zoll and Adler, to assistant GMs or whatever, that was another sign where things were headed. And the thing is, Thad's real popular across the league. I mean, he had a chance to go to Philadelphia. He had a chance to go to the Mets. The Red Sox were interested in him as recently as last year. Who knows? San Francisco may be calling him to work with Buster Posey. I don't know. But Thad was comfortable here. His kids love going to school here. He wants to stay. I'm not sure if he's going to get back in the front office side of things. I think he's going to look at a lot of different things. Someone speculated that he might do something on the other side of the aisle and maybe work with the Players Association just so he can stay in town so his kids can continue to go to school here. He's a gifted individual. He's well-rounded, very smart. He's done a lot of things. He worked for Coca-Cola. He worked for Reebok. He's done different things. He can do go in a lot of different ways. I texted with him the day after it was announced, and he said he thought it was a great achievement that he got through 25 years without having to be a free agent. So he's kind of looking forward to figure out his next step here. So,
Roy, did you get to know Thad very well?
Yeah, not really well, but well enough. I'd see him around in various places of the community, and I echo what LaVelle said. I think he'd really loved it here. I attended a wedding a few years ago up at Grandview Lodge, and it just so happened it was MEA, and he was up there with his family, his kids running around, and we had a beer together one night, and I just think he's everything LaVelle said. He's a really good guy, he's a really smart guy, and I'm sorry that he won't be part of the Twins organization. I mean, I guess I get it, but it's too bad. He's a quality individual.
Yeah, I agree. I always liked him. I always had great conversations with him. So I hope he lands on his feet. I'm sure he will. He's got a lot of different directions he can go with his life. But yes, I'm kind of sorry to see him leave. So much I want to get to. I want to talk about, what we all think they need to do within realistic parameters to get better next year. What hope is there for the young players bouncing back? Which injured players do you think you can really count on? We're talking about the playoffs. I want to talk to Roy about the incredible emotion being shown in the playoffs this year. I want to get to all that, but I think we've talked enough today. So we're going to save a lot of that for next week and the following weeks as the postseason and the offseason rolls out. I will ask you guys for a final thought here. It can be on anything you like: food, music, culture, TV, movies, anything else you want. I'll just say that the Twins were so bad in September, it made me not want to watch postseason baseball. It kind of burned me out on baseball. I was like, okay, I'm fully committed to shifting over and watching football now. But then I start tuning into this postseason, and the baseball's been spectacular. LaVelle, why don't you give us a final thought?
My final thought is this, for people who are listening. The season did not end the way that a lot of people wanted it to, and that's understandable. But the cupboard's not bare here. There's structures in place for this to be a really good team next year, with young guys getting more experience. They're going to have to figure out how they can fill out a rotation and a bullpen without unlimited funds. But the Twins are still a threat in this division, which is, it's definitely improved with the Guardians and the Tigers and the Royals all surging this year. But don't think that this 1 year means that the Twins are going to go in the tank. It's not going to happen. This is a good squad. It's a good roster. It just needs some tweaking and some health.
Agree. And I think we can get into a lot of really interesting ways that they can move forward with what they have. Roy, you have a final thought?
My final thought is I'll echo what LaVelle said about the Twins. And then because I think he's right about that, and I will just move to the playoffs. As bad as it was, and I agree. I hear what you're saying, how you were feeling, Jim. But I mean, I love postseason baseball, and this year is probably the quintessential example of why. It's just so much fun. I mean, there's so much on the line from the opening series, wild card series, and guys making big plays, and guys. Yeah, how about the game? The Cleveland Detroit game, where Detroit's going to win the game, and Stephen Kwan makes an unbelievable diving catch with everything on the line, and then they send Clase back out there for a second inning because nobody's going to hit Clase, and they figure maybe they can win in the following inning. And a couple of guys get bloop hits, and the kid takes him deep for a 3-run home run to win the game. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that happens. I mean, there aren't any bigger moments than postseason for you to step up and do something like that. And these guys that are doing it on every team, there's somebody on every team that has done it in a big way already, and it's why I love the game.
Yeah, and seeing Bobby Witt get the game-winning hits in his first 2 playoff games, and watching Skubal go out there and watch. I mean, I don't know how good the Tigers actually are, but Skubal is unbelievable.
If they could score
nasty.
some runs.
He is nasty. If they can figure out how to score 4 runs in his starts, they'll win 90 games and he'll win 20.
Good stuff, gentlemen. Enjoyed it. We'll get much more into the playoffs, more forward-looking Twins conversations. I'm looking forward to the offseason just because we end up talking about things other than games. That ends up being a lot of fun. If you're new to the show, we will talk about bourbon, cocktails, maybe wine, definitely blues and rock and roll, as well as baseball. So thanks for listening to TalkNorth.com. For Roy and LaVelle, I'm Jim Souhan.